and the poor are left in the ghettos, where one group of Americans looks upon another group of Americans with growing mistrust and even dread, and where, unfortunately, not because we lack the goodwill, but because we lack the faith in ourselves, our response often is to bolt the door, to hire more police, and stay away as far as we can from the centers of violence. In this decade, we have lived through periods of more hate and violence than perhaps any other time in the history of our country. It is a decade the likes of which we must never, and we can never, live through again. But as we approach the 70s, we must keep in mind the events of the 60s, or we will be compelled, as it has been said, to relive the past we have forgotten. The death of Martin Luther King was not the work of the white society, it was the work of a sad mind filled with hate. The death of Medgar Evers, of Emmett Till, the 4 little girls in the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, of the Reverend James Reed of my own state of Massachusetts, of Viola Luizzi of Detroit, of Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman. None of these tragic occurrences were the result of any one group or of another. They all suffered at the hands of individuals who somehow had the notion, in their sickness, that their violent actions would be tolerated. To the extent that all of us are to blame, black and white together, we are to blame for the apathy that gave the haters a license to hunt people in America. And those who now loot and steal, those who claim they have the right to honor the memory of a man of peace, a man who stood for everything that was nonviolent, by burning our cities, by breaking into the places of business, and terrorizing our neighborhoods, they too are suffering from an illness that, if allowed to go unchecked, will further drag down this great nation. Their actions cannot be tolerated. They will not be tolerated, for they do not mourn a great leader. They mock him. What has become of our land? What disease has affected us as a people? How many good men must we give? Common man in the streets, a holder of the Nobel Peace Prize, and even a President of the United States, before we finally face the fact that the weakness of our society is the weakness in ourselves, within each and every one of us who are complacent, who are doing well, who realize the comforts of material gain, and who are, above all else, apathetic. Where is the moral strength within us? The qualities of character that we attribute in stories to our children of the American heroes that have gone before us. I, for one, do not feel that we are any less than our forebears. I, for one, do not feel that there is anyone within this room who has less courage, less conviction, or is any less dedicated to the American dream than generations past. But I do feel that in a few short years we have let events master us rather than we them. I do feel in our great history we have fallen into a lapse. We have refused, each and every one of us, to exercise the talents and character bred into us. And as a result, in a land that was created on the Judeo-Christian ideals of love and brotherhood, we have let the haters take the lead. And we are paying that price today, as we have paid for it many days and nights in this difficult decade. It is not until we recognize that hundreds of years of oppression must be accommodated, not by the least we can give, but by the utmost we can give, will these nights of sadness and fear end. It is not the bigot among us who has brought us to where we are, for men of goodwill ignore him. It is not the racist among us who has brought our society so low, for it is easy to see and discount him. We are where we are because all of us are passing through life with our own personal blinders on. We favor civil rights bills and feel a warm glow in our hearts when we hear the eloquence of a Martin Luther King. We cluck our tongues over the agitators in the streets and call them outside troublemakers or ne'er-do-wells. In essence, we are all very decent men and women of good faith. And we are all doing very busy with our careers and with our families, all too busy with our own concerns to fight injustice, to fight poverty, and to fight ill will in the immediate world around us. As the United States Senator, my message to you today is very simple. We only delude and mislead ourselves if we feel that we lift a personal burden from our shoulder by passing pieces of legislation, important as that is, if we feel legislation can be our only response to our fellow men who are deprived. Beyond that, I would say that no matter how the most difficult questions of Vietnam is solved, no matter how we meet the future challenges in the Middle East, no matter how strong the controls we develop over the horror of atomic weapons, and no matter how we face the domestic problems of health for the poor, education for our young, and decent housing and better roads for the more distant parts of America, no matter how well we do these things, they will only be the epitaph of a great nation that could not bind its own wounds within itself, and as a result, lost itself. If laws do not meet the need, and they don't, if speeches will not meet the need, and they won't, if marches and demonstrations won't meet the need, and they won't, where are we to turn? We can only turn to ourselves. We're in a moment of national crisis such as we are experiencing now. That is all that is left. Men in public life, to be true to themselves, must be more candid with whomever they speak, regardless of the political consequences. Our ministers, our priests, our rabbis must be more relevant in social sermons with their flocks, regardless of how many unhappy people they will make. Our educational institutions and our teachers must see to it that America's young are not shielded from the realities of their society, but are educated to meet the challenges that will soon be theirs. And in our homes, as parents, we have our own responsibilities to wipe away cynicism and to introduce the understanding that we wish to see future generations exercise so they will not suffer as their mothers and fathers have suffered. Last Thursday evening, I left my office in Washington to attend a midnight church service, not in the church of my faith, but in the church of the faith of Dr. Martin Luther King. During that service, the pulpit was given up by the men of the cloth, and those in attendance were asked to speak their views and to console each other. Black and white alike rose to the occasion. Some were eloquent, others were harsh. I found myself recalling that day before the Lincoln Memorial in 1963, when Martin Luther King stood before a crowd of 250,000 Americans, proclaimed that he had a dream. He had a dream in which freedom would ring out for all Americans from the coast of Maine to Alaska, to the mountains, the east, to the mountains of the west. He will never see that dream. The moment that we realize that his dream is truly our dream, and the moment we work as individuals to make it come true, we will be one again, we will be strong again, we will proceed as a nation to the fulfillment of our destiny, to the fulfillment of the statement that this nation is the most important occurrence of the second 1,000 years. These are the thoughts I wanted to share with you today, and I thank you for letting me come back to Alaska.